Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new edition of Daily to Dynasty. I'm Craig Orbanoff, joined alongside by Rich Wilhelm and Marcus Taylor. Of course, you can follow everyone on this show on social media, on Twitter. Our handles are down below there at Daily to Dynasty, at Seagorps94, at Coda522, at Ian Taylor. I got to fix that graphic. 29, not 20. Yeah. And Taylor 29. I'll fix it. Don't worry. And John Hazlett not with us tonight, but we're going to be talking about him a lot. John Hazlett 475. We have a real fun show for you guys tonight, all about draft strategy. We're just a couple of weeks away from the NFL season, and we are so excited for it. And that means it's NFL draft time or fantasy draft time. So that is what this show is going to be about. Next week's show, it's all about fantasy football drafts. A little bit of business to attend to before we get started. If you want to interact with the show a little bit more, leave us a voicemail at anchor.fm/daily to dynasty. Leave us a voicemail. We'll answer your questions live on the next program. And of course, wherever you're listening to this, watching this, make sure you like and subscribe and give us a nice rating. It helps the show out immensely. And plus, it's a great way to interact with us and have some fun while you're learning about fantasy football. We want to, of course, thank our brand new partner over at ThriveFantasy. ThriveFantasy is a daily fantasy sports app for player props. They've completely eliminated the need to do countless hours of research because they only ask you about the top-tier athletes in a respective sport. Thrive has prop bets for almost every sport, and each prop has a fantasy point total associated with the over or under based on its likelihood to occur. The more points a selection is worth, the riskier it is. Rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. Thrive has awarded over $1.3 million in prizes since launching in 2018. Use the promo code Daily to Dynasty when you sign up today, and you will receive an instant $20 bonus on your first deposit of $20 or more. Download the Thrive Fantasy app on the App Store or Play Store, or visit their website, www.thrivefantasy.com. And now let's officially welcome in Marcus and Rich. How you guys doing tonight? It's another lovely evening. It's raining in my neck of the woods of New Jersey, but other than that, it's been great.
It's been sunny here. It's humid, but besides that, I'm living.
Yeah, no rain over here, not yet anyway.
Oh, it's coming, and it was like lightning. It was freaky. It was right when I was in the bathroom finishing up business, and a big old bolt of lightning. Like, it was scary. It was a scary way. Yeah, I mean, I definitely deserved the applause if you catch my drift. But guys, NFL fantasy football season is officially here. Our draft came and went. We were originally going to make our draft a 2-show special, and we ended up just kind of breezing right through it. It went a little bit faster than expected, and we drafted a whole dynasty league last week. Marquis was drafting, but was not on the show with us while he was drafting. So we kind of want to open the floor up to you, Marcus, and here is the draft results on our screen. How was your impressions of kind of how the draft went and how your team came together? I know Rich and I were very upset with some of the players you took because they were guys we were hoping would fall to us, and where you were positioned, you would screw one of us up for most of your selections.
I think the draft went well. I'm pretty sure I did good if I got players that you guys wanted, and I upset you about it. So I think I did pretty good with that. I had no issues with the draft. My strategy was really there's not a lot of running backs, so I try to load up on running backs early. I try to make them, at least 3 out of my first 4 or something like that, unless, somebody falls to me that's unexpected. But try to load up on running backs, maybe wait for a QB, and just try to get the best bench I can get.
Yeah, I mean, we were impressed with your draft. We were impressed with our drafts as well. In our mock draft 2 weeks ago, we kept poking fun at the computer for some interesting draft strategy.
Terrible.
And, but I kept saying, computers are dumb, but people are kind of dumb too sometimes. And some of these selections were crazy. I mean, we had a team that didn't draft a running back until the 7th round. So, I mean, yes, computers are dumb, but sometimes it helps you because odds are when you draft, there's going to be a couple of teams that don't do so well. So, neither here nor there. I'm sure that team will probably end up winning the whole league now.
Somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, now that I've publicly made fun of them, I'm sure they will win. But all in all, I thought it was a good draft. I thought we were all kind of true to form in our strategy, loading up on skill positions early, running backs and wide receivers. I believe I was the first one to select a quarterback in round 7. Rich, you didn't, or no, you were actually the first to take quarterback in round 5, Deshaun Watson, which Dynasty League makes total sense. Big fan of Deshaun Watson. And then, I think the rest of it was pretty straightforward in terms of the three of us. But you guys play together in yet another Dynasty League, which you think y'all would be like sick of each other in fantasy at this point? Like,
I want Marcus to win every year.
I'm trying to win.
I got to get him in as many leagues as possible so I can root for him.
Exactly. I mean, you got to root for your friends. And we said last week that you and I, Rich, had a very close fantasy football relationship. We probably talked more strategy while playing against each other than the average person. I think you and Marcus have a similar fantasy football relationship. Yeah. Which is always good to hear. Before we kind of dive into your guys' upcoming draft, and we're going to use your existing teams and your upcoming draft to kind of talk about just in general draft strategy and kind of how you should be positioning yourself to get the best possible outcome in your draft. But before we dive into that, there's like a little bit of NFL news going on. First of all, there's no COVID in the NFL, which is great. I mean, it's ravaging the world, but the NFL is not affected. There was the lab in NJ with a bunch of false positive reports. Whatever, I don't care.
Of course, it's New Jersey.
Of course, it's New Jersey.
Has to be us.
But I think it's also because we're like New Jersey's doing like the most testing. So like, you know what I mean? Like, there's more room. There's more room for error, or like they were getting a slice and just like kind of forgot about whatever the test was. No COVID in the NFL, and also teams left and right are canceling or boycotting practice. The NBA was very close to canceling the playoffs in response to the shooting in Wisconsin and the continuing Black Lives Matter protesting against police brutality. That'll be, I think, one of the things to watch more so than COVID now in the next couple of weeks about how this impacts sports and cancellations. Because, I mean, the players are rightfully so really speaking out against these injustices and really using their platform to try and make a difference. From a fantasy perspective, that's not what you want to hear because we're just trying to draft a team and I want to know who's going to play. But all in all, it's just something to keep an eye on. That's all the NFL news going on this week in football. So now let's dive on in to fantasy. Let's talk about fantasy football, guys. That's what we're here for on Daily to Dynasty. And Marcus, let's start with you. And let's you just talked about your one team. Now break down this team. Tell me about how long you've been playing in this league and kind of how you've inherited or developed this team over time.
Well, it's my first time in this league. I inherited this team, I think, last month. So I didn't draft this team at all. But it's not that bad of a team. I mean, I got Patrick Mahomes, so it's an instant winner for me. But the team, I like it overall. I got Kamara, I got Mahomes, I got Le'Veon, AJ, Matt Ryan. I got 2 good quarterbacks. Well, 3. I got Jones if he steps up this year. Slayton. I mean, Hawkinson is poised for a breakout year. I mean, the team is good. It's a solid team, and I plan to improve it more when the draft comes up. I'm going to add some depth, some good bench players, and try to go for that crown. But the team I inherited is pretty good. Patrick Mahomes is always a good start for any fantasy team.
For sure. I think, that's really, I think, where your success is going to come from. You have just the guy in fantasy football, and especially in a dynasty league to have Patrick Mahomes.
But knowing my luck, he might like break a thumb or something.
Well, last year, what did he do? He sprained an ankle or a knee, and like he still won a Super Bowl. So like, I think I'll knock on wood for you. But
it looked like his knee went backwards. I remember watching the game. I was in Texas, and I was in a hotel room, and I screamed. I was like, ah! I was like, whoa, I'm out of my house. But yeah, it looked like his knee was backwards, and then he's just like, all right, cool. I'll be back in a couple weeks.
Yeah, he took like 2-3 weeks off, and it was fine. It was no big deal for a man who should have torn an ACL, but that's okay. And so, Rich, let's take a look at your team now, and I assume you've been in this league a little bit longer, and you can tell me how you've developed this team over time.
Look at this thing.
Oh, you like this team? So this is my this is my third year in this league. My first year, I drafted Lamar Jackson, and I'm gonna admit I wasn't a huge Lamar Jackson fan back then. I took him because it was kind of like a depth signing. I had Ben Roethlisberger as my starter at the time. Christian McCaffrey is someone I inherited, which, I mean, thank you for whoever drafted him. Nick Chubb, I actually traded this year's first rounder and Sam Darnold for Nick Chubb and a third rounder. So that's how I got Nick Chubb. I actually did that trade with John, who can't be on the show today, but he thinks that Nick Chubb is going to lose a little value with Kareem Hunt. I don't think that at all. Stephon Diggs, I inherited. Julian Edelman, I actually got in a trade. I traded Golden Tate straight up for Julian Edelman. That happened 2 years ago. So that's how he's on my team. I drafted tight ends. You ready for this? I drafted George Kittle the same year I drafted Lamar Jackson, and I drafted Mark Andrews the same year. So, based on that core, in a dynasty league, in our dynasty league, it's only 7 picks, and 3 out of those 7 were Lamar Jackson, Kittle, and Andrews. So it's good to take a shot. And I took a shot, with these guys, and it worked out. David Johnson, I inherited, and then just going down the board. Roethlisberger, I inherited. Michelle, I actually traded Matt Breida straight up for Sony Michelle, which, I mean, that can go either way. Perryman, I added as a free agent off the waiver wire. Same with Lazard. Same with Deontay Johnson, which is very strange. I don't know why he was available after the draft last year, but he was. Same with Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst was dropped after the season, so I actually added him off the waiver wire, and so was Gronk. The second that Gronkowski signed with Tampa Bay, I picked him up immediately because in a dynasty league, it really never stops. If a player comes out of retirement, you can add him at any time. So obviously my strength, I would say, is in my tight ends and my running backs and my quarterback, I guess. So, I mean, if I'm looking at who I'm trying to draft in the first round, I think I'm going for a wide receiver in the first round. But this is a team where I've lost, I think, 3 games in 2 years. So I'm trying to keep that title. I got 2 straight titles in this league, so I'm ready for 3 straight.
Team is crazy. My strength is my quarterback, my running back, my tight end. It's everything. That's basically what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying, I wasn't trying to gloat, but I mean, if I'm picking any team out of the teams I drafted so far to win it all, I mean, it's going to be this team. But I mean, it's not the typical dynasty team. I feel, and I'll be straight up and honest, I would trade my picks every single year for players because it's kind of you don't know what's going to happen. I traded my first round pick the last 2 years, and it ended up as Nick Chubb. And I forgot who I traded the first year for, but it worked out. And I try to do it again, with my second round pick this year, no one bit, and I'll try to trade it again next year too. It's just I'd rather have the core, and if they've been in the league for 5 or less years, I mean that's kind of a dynasty player to me. So, but yeah, I mean you'll see John's team next. He's actually a dynasty team. Mine's just let's go, let's try to win it right now.
And I think that's, an interesting approach. And I think it makes a lot of sense, Rich. I mean, it's you have to 1 in the hand, 2 in the butt, whatever it is. there's some known commodity in the league right now, and if you can get them in fantasy for the draft pick, I think it totally makes sense. Let's take a look at John's team right now, and John's team is equally, pretty loaded with some young talent here. Starting, of course, with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, Connor, James or John? James Connor, Marlon Mack, Adam Thielen, Marcus, your boy. Rich loves Thielen too. Michael Thomas, Chris Herndon, Juju Smith-Schuster, Will Fuller, Greg the Leg, and then right here on his bench, Sam Darnold, Cam Newton, Latavius Murray, Samuel Hardman. Your little iPhone swipey there got in the way of that name here. And Smith, and then a whole mess of draft picks. So Marcus, as the newcomer to this Dynasty League, we've taken a look at 3 teams. How do you think you stack up, and like kind of where's your head at in terms of trying to work this draft coming up?
I think I stack up pretty well with John's team. My concern is Rich's team. I mean, even if Patrick Mahomes does go off, he has Lamar Jackson to counter. He has McCaffrey. He has those beast tight ends. I mean, he has a tough team. So I stack up well against John. My concern is Rich. I'll have to draft accordingly. I'll have to take some of those wide receivers. Maybe I can take some of the steam out of his team. But Rich team is going to become a problem for anybody. But John, I think I can handle. His wide receiver pair is pretty good with Thielen and Thomas. But the rest of the team, I think I can handle.
And Rich, what's your kind of overall thoughts on John's squad here in this league, and how you kind of, I mean, you've traded with him before. You have some of his draft picks. He has your first round draft pick. So kind of what's your analysis here?
Looking at this team, it looks very similar to a team that I had because I traded him, some of these players. If I'm looking at the team top to bottom, I had Juju Smith-Schuster on my team. I had Connor on my team. So the trade last year was actually Juju Smith-Schuster, Sam Darnold, who you could see both are still on his team, and a first-round pick for Nick Chubb and a third. You can see on the right side, he has the 12th overall pick. For me, in a Dynasty League, most of it's a dart throw. So I felt comfortable having Nick Chubb, especially with Juju Smith-Schuster probably going to be out in Pittsburgh next year. I have Deontay Johnson, so I was, comfortable making that move. John thinks that Hunt is going to take over most of the carries for Nick Chubb. I just don't feel that way. And then I don't know how I didn't remember this, but I actually got Christian McCaffrey from John as well. I traded him a first rounder, James Conner, and a slew of other things for Christian McCaffrey, which there's no way I could have lost that trade because I got Christian McCaffrey. So, I mean, if you're looking at his team, it's young and it's hungry. Deshaun Watson, I have on my other team. He's a top 5 quarterback. But if you're looking at Connor and Mack, I mean, they seemed like they were the perennial starters for their teams, and then something happened. Last year Connor was injured, and now there's a slew of running backs there that are looking to possibly take his job. You look at Marlon Mack, they essentially drafted his replacement in Taylor. So, I mean, his running backs aren't as strong as what they were, let's say, last year before the season started. But, he definitely has a team that's going to be a team that could withstand for a couple of years, and he knows how to draft, which, he's drafting 10th and 12th this year. Obviously, I don't draft until 13, and then Marcus has 6th. So it's definitely we're spaced out far enough where, we got to think of players that we're going to draft that the other person's going to draft, but we can make our own strategy. So I feel comfortable though.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, you definitely have made some great trades in that league. Some great trades.
Amazing trades.
Although I am willing to bet, and this is like a bit of a stretch, but I have all of our Code Green tape from like 2016 through when we did it. I'm pretty sure you didn't used to love Christian McCaffrey.
I'd find the tape.
I have all the tape.
That man is
bet.
that man is a miniature pony. I will say that I didn't like Lamar Jackson. I didn't. I thought that he was going to be a running back. I didn't think that he was going to be remotely what he was. But on the flip side, I love Patrick Mahomes, so that kind of was a wash. The tiny pony I never disliked. I mean, I dislike a lot of players in the NFL, but tiny pony was one of the ones that I loved.
If you find the tape, you gotta. What's the bet if he finds the tape?
If he goes through all that tape and he finds something, I'll give him whatever he wants.
You have to trade me Deshaun Watson in our Dynasty League
Whoa.
for a 10th round draft pick if I can
For a
find
kicker.
the tape.
All right, so I'll give you $5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Guys, wait, for the listeners' reference here, we're talking about over 164 episodes. So we're talking about like 180-ish hours.
Yeah,
probably
definitely worked $5 for something I never would say.
Yeah. I think one of these old shows, you may not have loved Christian McCaffrey as much as I did. So,
I think that was John, actually. I mean, he traded him to me, so it must be true.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
It's probably fair. All jokes aside, though, I mean, you have a very well put together dynasty team. Marcus, I think you have some really good young talent too, as well, on your squad that you've inherited, and you'll have the opportunity to kind of craft it and make it your own. Heading into your draft, which I believe is next week, right? What's both your guys' strategy? Marcus, let's start with you.
So a good strategy is rookies are good. Everybody goes for rookies because they're the future. But second, third year players could provide more value. You already see them in the offense. You already see them on the team, how they operate, what their role was, and you can kind of predict what their role will be going forward. So I may not shoot for too many rookies right away. If a good second, third year player is there, I can kind of gauge the amount of input and impact they'll have on the offense. So that's a little strategy I'll go by, unless it's a rookie at the top, like CeeDee Lamb is going to be a big part of the Cowboys offense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be a big part of the Chiefs offense, but they're kind of outliers, but overall, shoot for more second, third year players if they're there, just because I'm a little more familiar with what they can do and what they can't do.
And Rich, what about you? What's your strategy heading into this draft?
Well, I can safely say last year I didn't have one. I drafted 7 players, and not a single one of them stayed on my team. And only one of them was a rookie. And it was Paris Campbell, and he was off my team by week 4. So, I mean, like my team, the core is built. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of room to kind of crack that starting lineup. I need to draft a defense and a kicker this time around. I actually kept the Bears defense for a while there, but I feel like it's all right to let them go. They did what they needed to do. But I mean, picking at 13, it's kind of what's left over. With Marcus picking at 6, CeeDee Lamb could very well be there. And if CeeDee Lamb's not there, you're looking at like J.K. Dobbins from the Ravens, or you can crack, one of the first quarterbacks, which, they tend to go really early in dynasty leagues as well. I think I told Marcus already off air that, the guy that I want at 13 is Justin Jefferson. And if he's there, I'm going to jump all over him. I don't think you're going to pick him at 6, and I don't think John's going to pick him at 10. And if you guys do, then I'll just, I'll get someone better. But yeah, so I mean, I very well might, if Joe Burrow is there at 13, I could see myself doing that as well, just for trade bait, because I have Lamar. But Ben Roethlisberger's not going to be around forever, so that'd be someone to carry on. But wide receiver number 1 above all, just based on how my team is built and what Marcus said. I mean, there are a lot of cuts that happened. All the teams had to go from 22 to 15, so that's 7 times 12,
96. No, 94.
94.
Wow, Mark.
84. There we go.
Yeah.
Whoa, that is some fast math, though.
A number more than 80. So, I mean, you have a lot of good players that were cut, and there's a lot of surprising cuts out there, too. I And I'm not going to talk about that right now because, Marcus is here, but there are a lot of players that got cut that I'm like, what? But yeah, it's going to be a fun league. I mean, everyone is active. There's not a lot of trades in that league besides me and John trading back and forth. And then the one outlier where I traded, Golden Tate for Julian Edelman. But, it's kind of what your team is what it's going to be.
And I find that happens a lot in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues. There's often not a lot of trading, and I find the teams kind of get locked in, and that's sort of what your team is. And if you had a good draft, if you had success 3 years ago, odds are it's kind of how your team is going to be, because the good teams don't want to get rid of their keepers, right? They don't want to get rid of their Lamar Jacksons and their Patrick Mahomes and their Christian McCaffreys. Like, they want to keep all these studs, and like there's not a ton of flexibility. So with that in mind, what piece of advice do you have to maybe someone like a Marcus who's inherited a team, and you're in a league where it's not so active, there aren't so many trades, and you really have to make the most out of this draft?
Well, I mean, based on our dynasty draft, I know Mark is going to do well in this draft because he drafted a ton of rookies in our dynasty league. He built his team to win now, and he built the team to win later. I mean, I think you drafted P. Ryan, you drafted Brian Edwards, you drafted who else did you draft as far as rookies? You have Jalen Rager on your team.
Yeah.
So I mean, you definitely know how to do both at the same time, and that would be my advice. Take a stab on rookies, but if, like you said, there's people there from second, third year that you think is going to have an impact, don't just rely on rookies, because last year I had one and I won. So it's just a matter of following the waiver wire too. In dynasty leagues, there's not usually a fee to collect players. There's no fee in this league, so just take a chance on waiver wire people that you think are going to do well. That's what happened with me and Perryman last year. So it works out.
Yeah.
And Marcus, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that was going to be my piece of advice. Try to draft for what you need now, but also for the future. For example, if you're starting quarterback is somebody like a Drew Brees, he's going to put up numbers, but also he's 41. So you have him put up
67.
numbers.
Well, in NFL years, yeah.
Yeah. So he's putting up numbers because, he has Michael Thomas, he has Kamara, but also you need to address that need for the future. So you may want to draft a QB, a younger one, and also consider the team that your players are on. Like I said earlier, you have a player like a CeeDee Lamb or a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They play on very potent offenses. They're rookies, but they're going to get their share because they score so many points. Also someone like a Jalen Rager, he has a chance to become the number 2 receiver in Philly.
He has a chance to be number one.
Yeah, a chance to be number 1. Or if you go to Washington behind Scary Terry, they got Antonio Golden. He can be number 2 with the injury to Kelvin Harmon. He tore his ACL. So Antonio has a chance to become the number 2 receiver on that team. Not a household name, not a big name, but I think
he is in my household. My wife went to Liberty, and so did he. So he's like the first big dude from there. But yeah, him and Steven Sims.
Yeah. So I think also many people may not know him, but I think the opportunity is going to be there if he's going to be the number 2 option. And there's not that many offensive weapons with Washington. I mean, after the Darius Guy situation, Jordan Reed is always a injury-prone guy. He's not even there. I mean, it's just nothing there. So the volume should be there for somebody like him. So, like I said, just consider your need now and for the future, and also consider the team your players play for that can determine the amount of volume they get.
Yeah, and I think people get really caught up in who's the starter and who's going to get reps. And I think a lot of times people kind of forget, like, you need to be on a good team too, like to actually like get points. Like, for example, I think Denver's an interesting team this year. They're young and they have some talent, but like, I wouldn't particularly call Denver good this year offensively. And people are hot on the Melvin Gordons and the Phillip Lindsays and the Cortland Suttons. And I don't know. Like I'm just unsure about the offense. I'm unsure about the quarterback and the game plans, and so I steer away from players from Denver, despite there being some potential there. Whereas, there's say Arizona, right? Arizona had a very exciting offense last year. They're also very young, and it's not the best team in the world, but I think they've proven a little bit more that they're kind of able to move the ball up the field and score effectively. So I would lean more towards those kinds of players.
Yeah, I mean, you also got to look at what division they're in. You mentioned Denver. Denver plays with Kansas City twice a year. They're going to be down 40 points. You might have to throw up a couple Hail Marys to Jerry Jeudy and hope for the best. But, they're going to be against some of the hardest teams because of their division, So that's very important as well. Arizona, for me, I mean, they have a chance, to battle with Seattle and San Francisco. To me, I think the Rams are kind of the odd team out in that division right now, which is crazy to say. That entire division is loaded, but
what's funny about that division? Just a few seasons ago, before the Rams were the powerhouse for like 2 seasons, the Rams were on the bottom and the Cardinals were the best team. And then it flipped, and now it seems to be reversing itself. So, I mean, that division's crazy. It's very competitive.
Yeah, it's like the Saints division where they would completely flop the order a year in and year out until the Saints just, took control of it. But, you would have the Panthers one year, and then the Falcons, and then the Saints, and then the Bucks, and then the Falcons, and the Saints, and the Saints. And, it's fun. Divisions like that are fun. I mean, if you're a Jets fan, you know that you haven't won since 2002. The Patriots own that division. They probably still will somehow. But, with dynasty leagues, you have a team that you can build because your team can't build a team, just like all fantasy leagues. But this is fun. It's kind of like your child. You grew it from a little lad, and now it's a championship winner.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun of a dynasty league, more so than your standard fantasy football. Is I think there's an easy criticism of fantasy football that you're not actually doing anything, right? Like you're just picking players and whatever happens, it's all made up. But like there's some real ownership with a dynasty league, right? You make a pick, that player is yours like forever if it works out well. And you can really kind of have some ownership over a team and over some players, and it has a little bit more staying power in dynasty leagues.
And emotion. You got cuts to make, and you might come down to a player. You're like, man, this player's been good for me, but this upcoming rookie, I don't know who else to cut. I don't have anybody else.
So
you might have to make a hard decision.
So let me bring up mine. I was down to 2 players, and I went with my gut more than my head. If you see my list, you'll see, Perryman is on my list. The one thing that I say every year is I don't want Jets on my team. But I see that, Sam Darnold doesn't have much else besides Crowder, and him and Perryman are hooking up. So I cut Robbie Anderson. To me, it's kind of like the same player. They just go straight and they catch the ball. But, that was a hard decision to make. And it's something you think about for more than 3 seconds, like in a regular fantasy league. Now probably someone's going to draft Robbie Anderson. He's going to go to the Pro Bowl because he's not on the Jets anymore, and I'll regret it. But that was my hard decision this year. I cut Alshon easily because he's made class.
Don't worry, you'll draft him again.
I always do, right? I have him in our league.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marcus, what were some difficult cuts you had to make?
None.
None.
Mine were pretty easy. Yeah, I decided in like less than 10 seconds.
Well, that's because you inherited the team.
That's right.
Well, for you, we talked about year one. I mean, you kept Deshaun Hamilton, and then you let Chase Edmonds go. But, I mean, you could probably get him back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about it. He's not going to become Christian McCaffrey out of nowhere or something like that.
No, but it's fine.
Yeah. He might. You don't know.
With my luck, he probably will.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You might have given him the blessing to go on and be Christian McCaffrey. So, guys, I mean, listen, this show is all about draft strategy. We've talked about your draft inside and out. But I guess just what's your biggest piece of advice for anyone who's starting a dynasty league, we just started ours last week. I think the draft went pretty well, and people can get a lot out of that. But your biggest piece of advice for that dynasty league that's starting this season? What a season to pick to start a dynasty league, by the way.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, you have to.
Because football can be canceled at any time. At least you have your team,
Yeah, exactly. So if you were starting your dynasty league like we did last year, what is your biggest piece of draft advice? Rich, let's start with you.
So you can do it one of two ways. You can draft it like a redraft and try to win year one and then play with found money, which is kind of how I did it when I inherited the team. Or you can draft it for a team that you want to, put work into for the next, 4 or 5 years and maybe not win for the first 3, which is kind of how John does it. Either way is going to probably end up with a championship. It's just a matter of when. So probably in a couple of years, my team is going to be trash, but at least I could say that I won 2 or 3 times in a row. So for me, if you're starting a dynasty league, I think even in our league, I treated it like a redraft. I don't have a ton of rookies. I have a couple gray bushes there, but I have a team that's probably going to win at least, 10 games. And that's going to put me in the playoffs, and I have a very good shot at winning the entire thing. So for me, I like to play with money that I earned early on, and I don't feel bad about losing it later on because it's not mine.
Totally. Marcus, what about you?
Kind of what Rich said. I mean, pick a direction. Pick a direction as far as what type of team you want to be, and that can lead you to draft. I mean, if you're trying to win now and you're trying to just, get to 10 wins this season, start with a guy who is young and he's going to be successful for 5+ years, like Mahomes or McCaffrey or whoever. But if not, try to build and get some young guys, some rookies, second-year players, and build your team up to become a powerhouse. You may want to start with, let's say you do start with Lamar Jackson, but then you start getting the Justin Jeffersons, the Clydes or McCole Hardman or whoever. But just pick a direction that'll guide you to draft a certain way. Don't be drafting all over the place. Decide what you want. Draft those players to form the team that you want, whether it's to win now or for the future.
I guess my biggest piece of advice is don't draft players trending downward, especially in a dynasty league. So by that, I mean, so here's an example, and Rich will use your draft from last week. You drafted Todd Gurley in the 6th round. That's a player who's trending downward. And in a regular fantasy league, I'd probably say that's really good value for Todd Gurley. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Todd Gurley is ever going to be Todd Gurley again.
Well, I mean, you got to look at where I drafted him, too.
You got good value. You got good value.
And it's a new system. I think in Atlanta, I mean, he's probably in the best place to succeed. Obviously it's going to come down to his knee. But if I get him for 1 year, or 2 years, he's my 4th running back. I mean, I'll have a couple years to throw another guy in there. And if he's really off to a really hot start, I'll trade him for a 1st-round pick.
Now, listen, I think the rest of your draft made that pick okay because you only need him for 1 year. But I could see people waiting to take a running back, taking a Todd Gurley, and then all of a sudden you don't have a running back for the next 5 years because you decided to stake your future on Todd Gurley.
If you look at ours, like you said, someone waited 7 rounds to take a running back. I think they would have preferred Todd Gurley, and I have, the option of having him as my 4. Plus, I mean, like you said, a couple of years ago, he was the number 1 guy. So he was trending down when he was with the Rams.
Yeah.
But I would say that he's trending up now with the Falcons. They said they want to give him 25 carries a game. I think the man will die, but I mean, he'll die with 25 points on my team.
They can give him 25 carries, but if they're for -6 yards, it might not.
Well, if it's PPR, throw a couple catches in
there.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think that's my biggest advice for dynasty and keeper leagues. And obviously there's some exceptions to everything, but you don't want to necessarily draft players trending downward. You want to get people who are either on the way up or, established and has kind of some longevity, right? 3 years of consistent type of play ahead of them. That's obviously very hard to predict. You're going to have to shake the crystal ball once or twice, maybe consult the magic 8 ball once or twice and try to make some good decisions. But trending upwards. That's what we want to see in our drafts. So, guys, I don't know if you had anything else on your agendas, strategy-wise, you want to talk about before we close this one out. Marcus, we'll pass it over to you. Any closing thoughts here?
No, just I hope Rich team underperforms.
Hasn't yet.
Hasn't yet, never will.
Now I got the draft belt behind me, but you know,
Why
don't you grab it?
You want me to get it?
I want you to grab it.
We don't have time for this.
I mean, I just criticized him, live on the show, so it's only fair that we give him the chance to redeem himself and show off the merchandise a little bit. And I'll have to repeat myself when he gets his headphones back in. I was just saying,
it took me so long. It's so heavy.
I was just saying, it's only fair. I just criticized your draft last week on the show, so it's only fair I let you flash the hardware.
Well, I appreciate it. I should have two because I won, back-to-back years. I wanted a different one, but they said we only have one, so it's all good. Right here.
It's all good right there. Rich, any closing thoughts besides the champ is here?
Well, I mean, I'm happy that drafts are happening. People are getting good teams, and with no COVID right now, it seems we're at least going to get a week 1 start, which is cool, which I didn't really expect, but here we go.
Yeah, I didn't either, but we're certainly very excited for it. Regardless of how you've listened to this show, watched this show, thank you for doing so. Please either leave us a comment in the comment section below the player, or you can fire away on Twitter. You can reach us at Seagorps94, at EMTaylor29, at Coda522, at Daily to Dynasty, or if you want to bash on John's team like we did earlier in the program, at John Hazlett 475. We had a lot of fun on this one, talking all things draft strategy, and we're just a couple of weeks away from the NFL season. If you want to ask a question, if you want to leave us a voicemail, the link to do so is on the screen, anchor.fm/daily to dynasty. Leave us a voicemail. Let us know your draft questions. We'd love to answer them for you on our next show. A little bit of business to attend before we close this one out. If you love underdog stories, and odds are if you're a sports fan, you do, you're going to love our friends at the Underdog newsletter. Every week they sift through hundreds of articles, videos, and podcast interviews. And then every Tuesday morning they send out a bite-sized rundown of only the best stories you can find all in one place. Subscribe to the newsletter at jokermag.com/newsletter and follow them on Twitter at jokermaghq. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's show. For Marcus, for Rich, for John, who's taking a nice nap. I don't know. He didn't tell us what he was doing. I'm sure he's busy, though. This has been Daily to Dynasty. We'll talk to you next time.